of judicial branch centers on the idea of judicial activism, where certain judges will take liberties with social statutes to affect social change. I'm interested if you thought that was a valid critique, and if you think it does exist, if it's necessary to affect necessary social change.
I've been distressed in the last few years about the broad use of judicial activism as kind of a mantra of what people don't like about judges. And it's become so common. We hear it thrown out a lot by some members of Congress and some state legislators and other people who write or want to criticize judges. And I've never been totally sure what is meant by the term. And sometimes I think that an activist judge is a judge that the speaker doesn't much like, whatever it is. And I'm not just, it can be a very confusing term, but I think it is evidence that we are at somewhat of a crisis point in this country now in terms of public attitudes toward judges. And that's very, very disturbing to me. Go back to the intent of the framers of the Constitution. It was very important to them to have a judicial branch that was independent enough to be able to enforce the provisions of the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, even if the decision might become unpopular with a substantial number of people. The framers believed that unless they had provided for a judicial branch that had enough backbone and courage to enforce the Constitution, that it would be a dead letter, that if you were going to have a constitutional democracy, that was an essential element. And I think the framers were correct about that. They wrote two things into the Constitution to try to enable judges to act, we say, independently. I'll talk about that in a minute. One was, the salary of the federal judge can't be reduced while the judge serves. And they also set no term of years. The federal judges serve, the Constitution says, for good behavior. That was a term used in England in their Settlement Act in the early 1700s. And what that means is that unless the judge is impeached, removed by impeachment, then the judge himself or herself decides when it's time to step down. And that was thought by the framers to give them enough independence to enable them to function impartially and fairly on the issues coming before them without fear of retaliation or reprisal for handing down an unpopular decision. And that is absolutely critical. And today we're seeing real attacks on that system. Have you read at all about what's going to be on the ballot in November in South Dakota? There's a proposition in South Dakota in the state's constitution in order to remove judicial immunity. Perhaps you are not aware of it, but judges in all states and at the federal level have traditionally been immune from suit by litigants, by the people appearing before them, for carrying out their duties as a judge. I mean, you can't file a case or be a party to a case in a court, and then when you don't like the result, turn around and sue the judge. Judges are immune from suit. Well, the proposition in South Dakota would amend the Constitution so that a commission would be set up that could end witnesses after the case is over and accuse them of some wrongdoing and succeed in imposing fines or even sending them to jail if need be. And the proposition in South Dakota is called JAIL for judges. It stands for Judicial Accountability, I don't know, whatever it stands for, but it works out to be jail for judges. And that's a frightening prospect. In the state of Colorado, there's a proposition on the November ballot to cut the terms of state judges in their state in half. And it would apply to existing people on the state appellate courts. And that's another effort on behalf of people who are unhappy with judges generally, and an effort to cut short their service. And things are really disturbing. I've become rather active in this issue and helped sponsor a conference, a nationwide conference that was held at Georgetown University a week ago on this very subject. I'm very concerned about it, and I thank you for inquiring about it. And I hope as you think about and learn about the three branches of government and the role of the judicial branch, you too will be concerned about methods for attracting and keeping competent judges who are fair and impartial and who can serve, as we hope all judges can, in preserving the system of government that we have. Without them, I think we would never have had Brown's Board of Education. We would never have had the Nixon decision. There are a lot of things we wouldn't have had. So it's very important.